Hi, this is George Knowles, Communications Associate at the American Youth Policy Forum. Welcome to another AYPF Google Hangout, where we go behind the scenes with our program staff and talk about what went into producing our briefs, publications, or events. Thanks, we hope you enjoy it.
We're with American Youth Policy Forum, and we are co-authors of a recently released issue brief called Creating Access to Opportunities for Youth in Transition from Foster Care. And the brief is online, and we definitely encourage you to read the entire document, but we wanted to give you some background information today about how we gathered information for the document and some insights to that. So since the brief takes a state level approach, and we look at a lot of variations from state to state in terms of how they provide opportunities for this population of youth in transition from foster care, collecting that information was a huge first step for us. So Garrett, I'm wondering if maybe you can sort of step in here, since you did a lot of that information collecting and handled all of that data. I'm wondering if you can step in here and maybe talk about that process and maybe some of the challenges that I know you experienced there.
Yeah, sure. So I want to start out saying that Excel is a wonderful tool, and I used it during every step of my information gathering just to kind of organize what I was seeing and what the trends were in between states. And so I started with a 50-state scan, going through Google and kind of using key terms to pull out what programs were known nationally for being good examples of ways to help youth transition out of foster care. And so I started with finding programs for each state, or trying to, how do youth qualify for those programs, what type of organization was funding those programs, was it government or college and universities or a nonprofit? And then once I kind of got that together, I looked through all of the major programs and tried to find what they were providing. And that came into several different categories, and I kind of separated them into education, so providing money for education, or other school expenses, academic support, financial advice, and then that led into support and with housing, either providing it or assisting youth find housing, job training and career training, healthcare, and then other services provided like care packages and things like that. So kind of making this giant Excel table of all that information, and I tried to make it so that each state I only had 2 examples from, but there were some states that stood out. And so going through all of that, I later discovered the National Resource Center for Youth Development, which I do want to warn everyone, their page that all of this information that I gathered is coming down on March 31st. The information will still be housed in the Children's Bureau, but not as easily accessible, and it won't be updated. So using their information, I started to look at what's the maximum age for youth to remain in state-funded foster care for each state, what are their ETV policies, Title IV-E, Medicaid, all of that, going through their resources and combining that with the states that kind of stood out. And at the end of that process, we kind of came up with 10 states that were doing a really great job, and then narrowed that down to our shining stars, which is no one should be surprised that California is on that list, but we also had Michigan, Tennessee, Texas, Washington, North Carolina, so several states. And then from that, using the original Excel that we did, we divided it into 3 categories. Which, do you want to talk about those?
Sure. So before we get into our categories, I'm wondering if you can say one more thing, because I know we had some interesting internal conversations about, okay, this state extends benefits for youth from foster care to age 19 or to age 23. But then when we talk about extending benefits, we had some interesting conversations about what that means, because there are different qualifier. So can you maybe talk about sort of the complications in terms of state policies and extensions that you found?
Sure. So there have been several federal acts that states can take advantage of, but not every state does. And so in our issue brief, there's an appendix at the back that goes through each state and what the qualifications for the youth has to be to receive that extended care. Some are much more flexible than others. Like you said, the age range of extension goes from age 19 to age 23. And so it's something that we came across in talking to people was that a youth who was born in one state won't have the same benefits they would have in another state. So a lot of the states, you have to be in education somehow to receive any funding past age 18. That can include continuing your high school, getting a GED, going to community college, going to a 4-year technical training, are the most flexible. Then other states they only extend it until you get your high school diploma or GED. So that's really it says up till age 21, but that's really an extension of just basically a year or two, or possibly age 21, but in most cases, not as extended as it would appear. And healthcare, youth nationally are provided healthcare up to age 26 under the Affordable Care Act, no matter if that state accepted the Medicaid extension. So that's important to know for everyone, but that is a recent development and it's still being implemented. And one of the more frustrating parts of this project that we learned is that it doesn't matter what it matters what policies are passed, but it also matters how they're implemented. And those are two very different things, and can be a roadblock for several states.
That's great, thanks. So then that leads us into the conversation about how we organized our thoughts and our conversation about all of this in the brief that we documented. So we began conversations a little over a year ago with a large community of researchers, policymakers, and practitioners across states, and with national organizations here in DC and other places. And we began to ask, what do youth need when they transition out of foster care? And the short answer is everything. And so it's hard to really categorize youth needs when they do transition from foster care, but for the purposes of having a conversation about it, we really feel confident that we've come up with 3 categories that are broad enough to have a good conversation across research, policy, and practice. And so we have categorized our areas of need in our brief in the following 3 categories. And we have come up with the first category with the help of our friends at Youth Villages and at Tennessee's Department of Children and Families were a big part of this conversation. And they helped us sort of coin the term sustainable social capital. And so the second area of need then is permanency supports, which can include a lot of different things like housing, financial literacy, transportation. And then the third area of need is post-secondary opportunities like education and workforce. And AYPF, of course, defines educational opportunities in post-secondary, meaning a wide range of opportunities like 2-year, 4-year career technical education. So those are sort of the broad categories, and we feel like those give enough flexibility to talk about the overlapping needs that youth may experience.
You mentioned the help we got from our Tennessee friends. Can you talk more about why we changed it to sustainable social capital kind of halfway through the project? Because we originally were calling it Caring Adult Mentor, and the switch was fairly significant. So
that's right. So we really felt strongly that access to a caring, supportive adult mentor was a strong enough area of need that that's what we were going to document in our brief. But through a lot of conversations and really through refining our own thinking about this population, we learned more about this idea of sustainable social capital, which includes access to an adult mentor, but is really this idea that youth in transition from foster care often lack connections to resources in general, and really need the opportunity to be able to build their own network and their own networks of resources in their community, their own networks of relationships, their own connections to other people. So sustainable social capital really encompasses those opportunities to build those relationships, to connect to others in the community, and that hopefully leads to permanency supports and post-secondary opportunities. Yeah, those are some interesting conversations that we had. I'll say a little bit about some of the recommendations that this led us to. And we saw a lot of really great, strong examples of programs and state-level policies that are really rising to the forefront to address these needs. I do want to say, though, that we didn't see a lot of programs or policies or really awareness of the need to connect youth in transition from foster care to workforce opportunities. And, we documented that in the brief, and we hope that conversations continue in that direction. We won't spend time here listing all of the recommendations that we did make and all of the great examples of policy and programs that we documented. We hope that you'll read the brief to find that out. But one last thing that I do want to ask you about, Garrett, is the youth voice and youth stories that we included in the document. I know that we collected a lot of those, and you played a big role in that. So I'm wondering if there was any standouts to you, or if you had any thoughts on that process.
Yeah, so it was really interesting, and we received stories both digitally and then in person with youth, and so that was also really helpful to kind of get two different views on that, the kind of the formal story versus the in-person story. Through all of it, though, the thing that stood out to me most was just how important one person believing in the youth ability to better themselves or follow their dreams or help them really simply by like getting them a bus pass so they can get from school to home, just helping them in some way to let them know that someone believed in them, because these youth have all kinds of different backgrounds, different experiences, but that disconnection was kind of something that was a common factor between all of the youth. And so having someone who believed in them and helped them believe in themselves. A lot of the time when you listen to them, the youth kind of hears themselves saying, I didn't think I could do this, and now I'm doing more than I ever dreamed of. And I think that's just really important as a first step to help them throughout the rest of their lives, just to make that connection, whether it's with a biological family member, a foster parent, someone at the school, their boss, just someone who knows what they've kind of gone through and supports them.
So I actually think that's a really great transition to our last point, which is this idea that these young people are capable of everything. And so the title that we gave this brief was very intentional, creating access to opportunities for youth in transition from foster care. And the reason we chose that is because it really is the difference between youth being able to do it themselves but needing a little help accessing those opportunities versus viewing these young people as incapable. And so we wanted to take the approach of saying, yes, we know that these young people are more than capable of propelling themselves into post-secondary opportunities, into independent adult lives, but maybe they lack the resources and the connections that that their peers have grown up with and have become accustomed to. And so that's really the purpose of this document, is to say, here are the challenges that these young people face. Here are the opportunities for policy and practice, and maybe here's some additional points for conversation moving on down the road. So again, the brief is available online, aypf.org. We'll be having some continued conversations at upcoming forums on the Hill on January 30th and at the end of February, and we hope to see you there, and we look forward to your feedback. Thanks, Garrett.
Thanks, Erin.
Bye.